Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The rain was falling heavily on Manhattan, turning the sidewalks into black mirrors that reflected the neon lights and the hurried taxis. In a skyscraper with a glittering spire, the office of Henry Caldwell, a billionaire renowned for his colossal fortune and legendary arrogance, shone like a crystal palace. Inside, every piece of precious wood furniture, every Persian wool rug seemed to whisper of power and wealth. Henry sat behind his immense mahogany desk, his fingers tapping nervously on the smooth surface. His eyes lit up with a cruel glint as he observed the young boy who had just been brought into the room. Marcus, 16 years old, thin, dressed in worn and rain-soaked clothes, held in his hands a small violin, his only family heirloom, fragile and battered. "So, kid, you think you can impress us with that?" Caldwell sneered. His laughter echoed against the windows, cruel and harsh. "You know, here, nobody gives you any respect. Tough luck for you today." Marcus lowered his gaze, clutching the violin to his chest. His heart pounding, he knew this could be the worst moment of his life. Humiliation, sarcasm, mockery, all part of the role he had to play to survive. Yet, a strange determination shone in his eyes. He hadn't chosen the easy path, but he wouldn't give up. Caldwell's assistants watched the scene with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Never had they seen their boss so eager to mock, nor a kid so silently resigned. Caldwell leaned forward, his face twisted in a cruel smile. "If you make a mistake, kid, it won't be pretty. Prepare to be ridiculed. All the bigwigs will revel in your misery." Marcus took a deep breath, raising the violin to his shoulder. His fingers trembled, but he placed the bow on the strings, ready to play. The office fell silent. Even the ticking of the clock seemed to hold its breath. Then, in a simple, almost insignificant gesture, Marcus drew back the bow. A first sound rose, pure and vibrant. Instantly, Caldwell's cruel smile froze. The world around him seemed to vanish. The sound flashed across the room, erasing arrogance and contempt. For the first time, Henry Caldwell felt unsettled. And Marcus, without knowing it, had just transformed arrogance into admiration, humiliation into respect, by the simple magic of a violin. The silent office seemed larger than it actually was. Caldwell's assistants, usually impervious to human emotions, held their breath. Even the wind that rattled against the windows seemed to have stopped. Marcus held his violin firmly, his eyes half closed, focused on the vibration of the strings. Every movement of his bow was calculated, every note charged with an emotion that money and power could not buy. Henry Caldwell, seated behind his immense desk, felt a shiver run down his spine. His cruel smile, which had always intimidated those around him, was now frozen, his lips slightly parted as if to hold back a word he couldn't pronounce. "It's impossible," he murmured, almost to himself, his voice choked with wonder. Marcus's music filled the room, and with each note, Henry perceived a depth he had never known. The melody told of years of struggle, poverty, and loneliness, but also of resilience and hope. Caldwell realized, with a touch of shame, that he had never felt such intensity towards someone he considered inferior. The assistants exchanged perplexed glances, unsure how to react. No one had ever seen their boss like this. His hands trembled slightly, and his gaze, usually piercing and domineering, was now filled with an unfamiliar emotion, respect. Marcus continued playing, oblivious to the effect he was having. Each note seemed to etch a tale of dignity and courage into the air. Caldwell, unable to look away, felt a lump in his throat. The humiliation he had anticipated for the boy was transforming into something else, a silent, profound admiration. When Marcus finally laid down the bow, the office fell into a heavy, almost sacred silence. Henry Caldwell rose slowly, his legs trembling. He approached the boy, and for the first time, his words were not laden with mockery or power. "You have something I'll never have, something money can't buy," he said, his voice soft but full of gravity. "Well done." Marcus, surprised, looked up at him. Caldwell's usually cold and cruel eyes were now filled with respect. And at that precise moment, something profound had changed, Caldwell's perception of power, money, and true human greatness. For a poor boy with a battered violin, this moment marked the beginning of a new life. For the billionaire, it was the first step towards humility and the discovery of what he had never understood: true power lies in the ability to touch hearts. The silence that followed Marcus's last note seemed to last an eternity. Caldwell, still in shock, turned away from the window to face the boy. His assistants, used to their boss's coldness and arrogance, exchanged intrigued glances, uncertain of what would happen next. "Marcus, you play as if your violin were telling the story of a whole life," Caldwell murmured, his voice trembling with emotion. "And yet, you're only 16. The boy lowered his eyes modestly. "It's just what I feel," he replied softly. "My father, he taught me music before he passed away. It's all I have left." Henry felt a lump form in his throat. He had spent his life accumulating wealth and power, believing that this defined greatness. But this simple violin, this boy, had the power to make him tremble. After a moment of silence, Caldwell made a surprising decision. "Marcus, I want you to come work with me. Not here, not to clean or fetch coffee. I want you to do what you know how to do. Music. I'm going to make sure the world hears what you have to say." The young boy stared at him in disbelief. Never had anyone, especially not a man like Caldwell, offered him such an opportunity. His heart pounded, torn between fear of the unknown and the sudden hope of a future he had never dared to imagine. I don't know what to say," Marcus stammered. "Why me? I'm just a poor kid with an old violin." Caldwell approached, his face softened by a rare sincerity. "Because you have something money can't buy. Truth. Beauty. Courage. And that's exactly what the world needs to hear." The assistants, surprised by their boss's transformation, remained silent. Caldwell, for the first time, was not seeking to humiliate. He was seeking to uplift. That night, in the luxurious Manhattan skyscraper, a billionaire and a poor boy made a silent pact. Marcus was about to discover the life he had never dared to dream of, and Caldwell was about to learn, little by little, what it truly meant to be powerful, not to dominate others, but to inspire them. But, deep down, Caldwell did not yet know that this decision would confront him with painful memories, with regrets he had buried under mountains of money, and that Marcus, despite his youth, would show him the way to a redemption he had never considered. The next morning, Caldwell's office had transformed into a strange mix of music room and workspace. An old piano, sheet music scattered on a table, and Marcus's violin carefully placed in an open case like a treasure. Marcus, still nervous, placed the bow on his violin. Caldwell stood by the window, watching the city awaken in silence, his eyes fixed on the boy. The assistants, ever skeptical, wondered how this mere teenager could hold so much of the billionaire's attention. "You have to understand one thing, Marcus," Caldwell began, his voice unusually calm. "Here, I don't expect you to play for me. I want you to play for yourself. For every note to tell your story, not mine." Marcus took a deep breath. His fingers trembled, but this time it wasn't from fear. He placed his bow on the strings, and a pure sound rose in the office. Each vibration seemed to paint the space with a new light, erasing the ostentatious luxury and the usual coldness of the place. Henry, motionless, felt that lump in his throat again. He closed his eyes for a few moments, unable to tear his gaze away from Marcus's focused expression. The music wasn't just filling the room, it was penetrating every corner of his soul, awakening buried memories and emotions he had always ignored. The assistants whispered among themselves, both frightened and fascinated. Never had Caldwell spoken to them with such respect for anyone. Never had he let such vulnerability show. When Marcus finished, the silence became heavy, almost sacred. Caldwell, his hands in his pockets, approached slowly. "You have the rare gift of transforming pain into beauty," he murmured. "And believe me, that's not something everyone can do." Marcus lowered his eyes, embarrassed. I don't know if I can continue like this. Caldwell placed a firm hand on his shoulder. You can. And you must. Because what you're doing is more than just music. It's a message. And I'm going to make sure the world hears it. But behind this well-intentioned decision lay another challenge. Caldwell knew that certain secrets from his past could threaten the fragile bond between him and the boy. And Marcus, despite his youth and talent, would have to confront not only the demand for perfection, but also the shadow of suffering that Caldwell had always carried. Thus began their journey, an arrogant billionaire and a poor boy, bound together by music, ready to discover that true power lies not in money, but in the ability to move and transform lives. A few weeks later, Caldwell had organized a small private party in one of his many sumptuous salons. A few investors, influential friends, and music critics had been invited, intrigued by the mysterious young boy whom Caldwell had taken under his wing. Marcus, dressed in a simple but neat shirt, stood before the audience. His violin, despite its scratches and age, shone in the lights like a jewel. The boy felt his heart race, but a strange confidence filled him. He knew that Caldwell believed in him, and this silent faith gave him the strength to play. When his fingers touched the strings and the bow slid to produce the first note, an instant silence fell. The guests, accustomed to luxury and social niceties, were captivated by the purity and depth of the melody. Each note not only told Marcus's story but seemed to awaken forgotten emotions in each of the spectators. Caldwell, standing at the back of the hall, felt his body tense. The boy he had initially wanted to humiliate, whom he had almost despised, was now captivating an entire audience. And yet, the emotion that overwhelmed him was more personal. Each note brought back childhood memories, loneliness, and mistakes he had made out of arrogance and pride. At the end of the play, the audience remained silent for a few seconds, as if absorbing the beauty of the moment. Then, a thunderous applause erupted. Caldwell, however, remained motionless, his eyes misting over, unable to move immediately. His assistants exchanged fascinated glances. They had never seen their boss so deeply moved. He's incredible, one of them murmured. Caldwell, slowly regaining his voice, approached Marcus. You see, you didn't just play for them. You played for me. And you reminded me what it means to feel, what it truly means to live. Marcus, his cheeks flushed, looked down. I didn't think it would affect so many people. Caldwell placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare and protective gesture. You've done more than that. You've opened a path that even money and power could never create. And I will do everything to ensure the world continues to hear your voice. However, this success was accompanied by a new tension. Some guests, fascinated but skeptical, began to whisper about Marcus's youth, his poverty, and his lack of formal education. Caldwell felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. Protecting Marcus would not only be a matter of resources, but also of courage in the face of those who judge without understanding. Thus, the poor boy and his billionaire mentor embarked on a path filled with music, criticism, but also life lessons that would forever transform their perception of the world and of power. A few weeks after the first performance, Caldwell had organized a larger concert in a prestigious Manhattan music hall. Marcus, although used to rehearsals and small evenings, felt for the first time the weight of the gaze of a large and demanding audience. No sooner had Marcus stepped onto the stage than a murmur rippled through the room. Among the guests was Victor Langley, an influential music critic, renowned for his cruelty and arrogance. Caldwell had known Victor for years. Once an ally, he had become a cunning adversary, jealous of any success that didn't originate with him. When Marcus began to play, the first notes rose, clear and moving. The audience was immediately captivated. But Victor frowned, a contemptuous smile on his lips. A poor kid with a battered violin, we'll see how long he lasts in front of a real audience, he murmured to his neighbor. The tension rose. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat, but he remembered Caldwell's words, play for yourself, not for them. He focused his energy on the music, letting each note express his life, his struggles, and his courage. But just as he was reaching the climax of his play, Victor suddenly stood up and made a scathing comment aloud. It's touching, but a true musician doesn't just play with their heart. You need technique, discipline, and he has none of that. An icy silence fell. The murmurs turned to concern. Caldwell felt his blood boil. His first reaction was pure anger, but he remembered he had to protect Marcus, not add to the pressure. With a calm but firm gesture, Caldwell stepped forward. "Victor, you can criticize if you want, but know this boy has something that neither you, nor any other critic here, will ever have. The courage to transform pain into beauty. And that's what touches hearts, not so-called technical perfection." Victor's eyes narrowed, surprised by the billionaire's audacity. Marcus, encouraged by Caldwell's support, continued his music with even more passion. Each note seemed to defy Victor's cynicism and arrogance, captivating the entire room. At the end of the performance, there was complete silence before a resounding ovation erupted. Even Victor, despite his arrogant air, felt his heart swell at the pure emotion emanating from Marcus. Caldwell placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "You see, Marcus, even when faced with those who want to put you down, truth and talent always end up shining through." That night, Marcus learned a crucial lesson. The road to recognition would be fraught with trials and criticism, but with Caldwell by his side and his music as his weapon, he could overcome any obstacle. A few days after the concert where Marcus had brilliantly faced off against Victor Langley, an unexpected phenomenon occurred. Critics, journalists, and influencers began talking about the young prodigy and the story of his meeting with Henry Caldwell. Social media quickly erupted, sharing videos of his performance and the audience's admiring comments. Caldwell, initially surprised by this sudden attention, realized the magnitude of what Marcus had just unleashed. The humble and focused young man had never sought fame. But the sheer beauty of his music and the authenticity of his journey touched hearts like a silent hurricane. Caldwell's phone never stopped buzzing, invitations to television shows, offers of sponsorship, and even international producers wanting to work with Marcus. But for Caldwell, the most important thing was to protect the boy. He knew that success could be dangerous. Harsh criticism, jealousy, and unscrupulous media could transform admiration into unbearable pressure. "Marcus, a lot of things are going to change for you," Caldwell said, walking him into his office. "The world wants to see you, hear you, showcase you, but remember, your music comes from your heart. Never let it become a performance to please others." Marcus nodded, a mixture of nervousness and pride in his eyes. He was beginning to understand that his talent had immense power, but that he had to remain true to himself in order not to lose himself. However, success also brought its share of challenges. Some sponsors and critics began to doubt Marcus's legitimacy because of his young age and humble origins. Others were jealous of his close relationship with Caldwell. But with each attack, the billionaire's trust in him served as a shield. A week later, Marcus was invited to a prestigious gala, accompanied by Caldwell. It was the first time he felt truly accepted in a world he never imagined he would enter. Admiring glances mingled with skeptical whispers, but Marcus held fast to his violin and his dignity. At the end of the evening, as the media crowded around them, Caldwell whispered to Marcus, "You changed my life, boy. I didn't know you could feel so much with the music of just one violin. And now, the whole world is going to feel what I felt that night." That night, Marcus understood that his talent was no longer just a refuge from his difficult past, it was a light capable of inspiring thousands of lives. And Caldwell, for the first time in years, felt humbled and moved, aware that his money and power were worthless compared to the pure truth and beauty of music. A few weeks after Marcus's media success, Caldwell began to feel the weight of his past. During a meeting with his advisors, an old associate, Edgar Whitman, burst into the office, his face closed off and his eyes full of reproach. "Henry, you're acting like a madman," Whitman said icy cold. "That boy, Marcus, hasn't just attracted public attention. He's also attracted the attention of those who haven't forgotten your past mistakes. Do you think you can play the benefactor after all you've done?" Caldwell felt a cold sweat run down his back. Old matters he had always preferred to bury were suddenly resurfacing, questionable financial decisions, betrayals by partners, and scandals he had thought were buried forever. Marcus, sitting in a corner of the office, felt the atmosphere crackle with electricity. He understood that the world's admiration wouldn't be enough to protect Caldwell from his past enemies. His courage was put to the test. Should he intervene, speak out, or remain silent? I don't understand everything, Marcus murmured. Why would anyone want to separate us? Caldwell approached him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Because some people don't want to see someone like you succeed. And because I haven't always been a perfect man. But this time, I won't let anyone harm you, or what we've started. Whitman crossed his arms, looking menacing. You think you can protect this kid with your money and influence? Life isn't a melody you can play perfectly. It's hard, cruel, and sometimes it crushes you before you can even touch a single note. Caldwell took a deep breath. He knew he had to act with caution. But for the first time in years, he felt that his wealth and power could be used for something nobler, protecting Marcus and giving him a chance to shine despite the storms. Then we will face this storm together, he declared firmly. You have the courage, the music, and the heart. And me. I have learned not to shirk my responsibilities. Marcus felt a new determination stirring within him. This ordeal, though terrifying, would be a necessary step to prove not only his talent, but also his inner strength. And Caldwell, by confronting the ghosts of his past, began to discover a simple yet profound truth: protecting beauty and sincerity is the greatest power of all. The storm that was coming might be the toughest they had ever faced, but together they were ready to defy the world and transform adversity into a symphony of courage and resilience. The day after the gala where Marcus had wowed the press, an unexpected event was announced: a live performance on national television. Caldwell had accepted this opportunity to propel Marcus onto an even bigger stage, but he knew the stakes would be enormous. On the day, Marcus entered the studio, trembling slightly under the spotlights and the gaze of the cameras. The studio audience and the millions of viewers at home represented unprecedented pressure. Caldwell, a few feet away, watched him intently, sharing his anxiety and offering silent support. Everything was going well until the third piece. As Marcus drew the bow, a violin string suddenly broke. The sound stopped abruptly, leaving an icy silence. The cameras seemed frozen, and the audience held its breath. Critics and viewers began to murmur, some laughing almost nervously. Marcus felt his heart race. The fear of failure, the shame, and the anxiety of disappointing Caldwell paralyzed him for a moment. He closed his eyes, trying to catch his breath, but the pressure of the moment seemed overwhelming. Caldwell, however, did not move. He stepped forward slowly, placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, and said in a firm but gentle voice, "Marcus, it's just a string. It's not your music, it's not your heart. Breathe. Keep going. Show them who you really are." These words, simple yet powerful, had the effect of an electric shock. Marcus opened his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to improvise, using the 3 remaining strings. The melody, though different from what he had planned, gained in intensity and emotion. Each note told a story of resilience, courage in the face of adversity, and the beauty of never giving up. The audience, initially shocked, was soon captivated. Murmurs turned into exclamations of admiration. Caldwell, his eyes shining, felt immense pride. The boy he had wanted to protect had just transformed failure into triumph. When the last note sounded, a thunderous applause erupted in the studio. Marcus, breathless but smiling, looked down at Caldwell. The billionaire nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "That's it, Marcus. That's what real talent is. It's not about perfection, but the ability to transform obstacles into beauty." This unexpected performance made Marcus an even more respected and beloved prodigy. But it also marked a turning point for Caldwell. He understood that his role was not only to finance and protect, but to guide and inspire the boy through the trials of real life. That night, Marcus and Caldwell knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, their bond and determination would be the key to weathering any storm. A few months after Marcus's successes, their partnership had become famous. The media spoke of the miraculous relationship between the billionaire and the young prodigy. But with fame came pressure, jealousy, and rumors. One morning, Marcus received an unexpected offer. An international producer was offering him an extremely lucrative solo contract, with world tours and exposure that even Caldwell had never imagined. But there was one condition: Marcus had to leave Caldwell and perform under his own name, without a mentor or accompanist. The boy was torn between temptation and loyalty. Caldwell had been more than a mentor, he had believed in him when no one else had. But the opportunity was enormous, and Marcus knew he might never get another chance. When he told Caldwell about the offer, the latter felt his heart clench. The shadow of the fear he had always carried, the fear of losing what he cherished, resurfaced. But he masked his pain with an apparent calm. "Marcus, what you have received is a unique opportunity. I will never hold you against your will. But remember this: true success is not measured solely by fame or money. It is measured by fidelity to yourself and the values you uphold." Marcus lowered his eyes, troubled. He saw the sincerity in Caldwell's eyes and knew that the decision he made could either break or strengthen their bond. The following day, during a rehearsal, Marcus felt the weight of doubt bearing down on every note. Caldwell, attentive, approached and gently placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "You are capable of shining on your own, but know that I believe in you, no matter which path you choose. And if you ever leave, know that you leave with all my respect and support." These words freed Marcus from his anxiety. He understood that the choice had to come from his heart, not from fear or external pressure. He looked up, determined. "I want to continue, with you. Because what we have created together cannot be replicated elsewhere. My music, it needs our connection." Caldwell smiled, moved and relieved. For the first time in a long time, he felt that their mutual trust had been strengthened, despite the temptations and obstacles. But in the shadows, some old enemies, jealous of this unique duo, began to plot to sow discord and test their strength once more. The real challenge wasn't just success or fame, but the ability to protect their relationship from those who wanted to destroy it. The long-awaited day arrived, a live-streamed global concert, bringing together the world's greatest critics, patrons, and music lovers. Marcus was to perform an original piece he had composed, inspired by his past, his struggles, and the unique bond he shared with Caldwell. Behind the scenes, Marcus was trembling slightly. Caldwell placed a hand on his shoulder, with that mixture of firmness and tenderness that had always soothed the boy. "Breathe, Marcus. This isn't just a performance. It's proof that everything we've been through had meaning. Show them the power of your heart." The lights went out. Silence reigned. Marcus raised his violin and, for the first time, felt each note flow not from his hands, but from his soul. The melody began softly, then grew in intensity, touching every audience member and viewer. Painful memories, poverty, past humiliation, the fear of failure, all were transformed into pure beauty. But as he approached the climax, an incident occurred. A power outage plunged the hall into total darkness. A murmur of concern rippled through the audience. Marcus, however, remained calm. He continued playing by ear, each note resonating in the darkness, transforming the chaos into a moment of pure magic. Caldwell, witnessing this incredible mastery, felt an intense emotion wash over him: pride, admiration, but above all, gratitude. He understood that Marcus had not only overcome his own fears, but that he had inspired all those listening to him to find their inner courage. When the lights came back on, the audience erupted in thunderous applause. The critics rose, some with tears in their eyes, aware that they had just witnessed something exceptional. Marcus, breathless but radiant, put down his violin. Caldwell stepped forward, his heart aching with emotion, and murmured, "You did more than play music. You changed lives, including mine." At that moment, Marcus understood that his music had a power infinitely greater than fame or money. And Caldwell realized that true wealth lay not in his billions, but in the ability to touch souls and protect those in need. The whole world witnessed their symphony, a poor boy and a billionaire transforming hardship into beauty, arrogance into humility, and fear into courage. Their story became a legend, reminding everyone that true power comes not from money, but from the ability to inspire and uplift others. And so, in that room lit by music, Marcus's violin and Caldwell's presence left an indelible mark on everyone's heart, proof that even in darkness, beauty and courage can shine brighter than anything.